Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most debated questions in global politics, why many analysts argue that Putin cannot truly win his war in Ukraine, and why Ukraine's counterplay continues to disrupt and weaken Russia's long-term strategy. This isn't about sensationalism or dramatic predictions. It's about understanding the structural forces, the strategic miscalculations, and the evolving dynamics that make a decisive Russian victory increasingly unlikely. So let's break it down in a clear, engaging way, step by step, exploring each major factor behind this conclusion. From the very beginning of the war, Russia expected a swift, overwhelming victory. The plan was built on speed, surprise, and the assumption that Ukraine would collapse politically and militarily in a matter of days. But Ukraine proved resilient, unified, and far more capable than Russia anticipated. This miscalculation has shaped the entire trajectory of the conflict. It's not just about battlefield performance. It's about the fundamental misunderstanding of Ukraine's identity and national determination. Once a war begins on a false premise, the strategic consequences compound over time, and that's exactly what we've seen. Another key issue is that Russia is fighting a war of conquest in the 21st century, where territorial domination is far more difficult to sustain than in the past. Occupying territory requires massive resources, soldiers, logistics, administrative control, economic stability, and local cooperation. Ukraine has denied Russia these advantages. Even in areas Russia captured, resistance networks, information sharing, and partisan activity have created constant instability. Occupation has costs, and Russia is paying those costs daily, whether through disrupted supply lines, sabotage, or simply the need to divert troops to defend areas far from the front line. Ukraine's use of modern intelligence, combined with support from partners, has also played a decisive role. Today's warfare doesn't rely solely on tanks rolling across borders. It relies on sensors, satellites, drones, cyber capabilities, and rapid information cycles. Ukraine integrated these tools faster and more effectively than Russia. Small teams with drones can destroy expensive armored vehicles. Long-range precision strikes can neutralize supply depots, command centers, or naval assets without risking thousands of troops. This asymmetry is one of the biggest reasons the phrase unstoppable counterplay even makes sense. Ukraine doesn't need overwhelming force. It needs precision, agility, and access to data, and it has all three. Russia's logistics have been another major weakness. A military is only as strong as its supply chain, and Russia entered the war with outdated, rigid, corruption-ridden logistics systems. Convoys stretched too long, vehicles broke down, fuel and ammunition didn't arrive when needed, and communication networks often failed. Ukraine targeted these weaknesses relentlessly, turning logistics into a battlefield of its own. Every destroyed depot or bridge slowed Russia's momentum. Every delayed delivery amplified Russia's frustration. Warfare isn't just about who fires the most bullets. It's about who can sustain the fight. And sustainability has been one of Russia's greatest vulnerabilities. Economic pressure has also shaped Russia's strategic position. War requires money, weapons, salaries, equipment, repairs, and replacements. Sanctions didn't collapse Russia's economy, but they reshaped it in damaging ways. Russia became more isolated, more dependent on limited trade partners, and more vulnerable to long-term decline in key industries, especially technology and energy. Ukraine, meanwhile, benefited from financial and military support from a broad coalition of nations, allowing it to stabilize its economy, maintain essential services, and fund its defense. This imbalance is like two players in a long chess match. One has a steady supply of pieces, while the other slowly loses material without a clear path to replenish. One of the most underestimated elements of this conflict is morale. Russian forces have struggled with motivation, cohesion, and clarity of purpose. Many soldiers didn't know they were invading a neighboring country until the moment the war began. Others felt poorly supplied, poorly led, and poorly informed. Ukraine, on the other hand, is fighting for survival, identity, and independence. This creates an enormous psychological gap. Morale affects everything: combat effectiveness, discipline, decision making, unit coordination, willingness to take risks. High morale can multiply a smaller force's effectiveness. Low morale can cripple a larger one. Ukraine's counterplay has also been shaped by adaptability. Throughout the conflict, Ukraine has shown an ability to learn quickly, integrate new tactics, and evolve its strategies. From drone warfare to trench assaults, from naval strikes to defensive engineering, Ukraine continuously adjusts to the shifting battlefield. Russia, by contrast, has often repeated the same costly tactics, relying on mass assaults and artillery barrages reminiscent of older eras of warfare. Adaptability isn't just a nice quality, it's essential for modern conflict, and Ukraine has repeatedly used this flexibility to outmaneuver and outthink a larger opponent. Another major factor is the international community's perception. Russia sought to divide global alliances, to intimidate other states into neutrality, and to present itself as an unstoppable force. Instead, its aggression galvanized cooperation, strengthened NATO, and deepened Ukraine's ties to Europe. International legitimacy matters because wars are not fought in isolation. Diplomatic support influences aid, sanctions, technology transfers, training programs, and intelligence sharing. Russia's diplomatic isolation creates long-term strategic disadvantages. Ukraine's strengthening alliances, on the other hand, enhance its military resilience. Technological innovation has played a monumental role. Ukraine pioneered drone tactics that changed the nature of the battlefield. Maritime drones challenged the dominance of Russia's Black Sea Fleet. Homemade and commercial drones turned every soldier into a potential artillery spotter. Western technology, from air defenses to precision missiles, enhanced Ukraine's reach. Meanwhile, Russia struggled to modernize, often relying on decades-old equipment. Even when Russia mobilized more troops or imported more drones, the qualitative gap persisted. In modern warfare, quality can outweigh quantity, and Ukraine repeatedly demonstrated how innovation offsets numerical disadvantages. Another structural challenge for Russia is manpower. Mobilization brought more soldiers to the front lines, but quantity did not guarantee coordinated capability. Training cycles are rushed, equipment is scarce, experienced officers have been lost. Replacing skilled soldiers isn't easy, it takes years, not weeks. Ukraine, while also facing manpower strain, compensates through better training integration, higher motivation, and access to diverse support networks. The human component of warfare remains decisive, and Russia faces long-term demographic and training constraints that limit its capacity to achieve lasting victory. Ukraine's counterplay is also rooted in decentralized decision-making. Small units can act autonomously with real-time information. This creates agility on the battlefield. Russia's top, heavy command structure, on the other hand, delays decisions and punishes initiative. In warfare, speed matters. A delayed decision can be the difference between a successful defense and a costly retreat. Ukraine uses rapid decision cycles to probe Russian weaknesses, exploit gaps, and retreat before Russia can react. These tactics wear down a larger opponent through constant pressure and unpredictability. Russian domestic politics add another layer of complexity. Authoritarian systems struggle with honest reporting, internal criticism, and strategic recalibration. Mistakes are hidden, not corrected. Failures are punished, not studied. This environment makes it hard for Russia to adapt effectively. Ukraine's open political environment encourages feedback loops, public accountability, and flexible planning. Domestic governance becomes part of the war effort, and Ukraine's political resilience has reinforced its military resilience. Territory in modern warfare is also more fluid than many assume. Russia may capture land, but holding it is another matter. Without stable logistics, local cooperation, secure supply lines, and effective governance, territory becomes a burden. Ukraine uses precision strikes, sabotage, and intelligence networks to destabilize Russian-held areas. The result is a dynamic battlefield where Russia's territorial gains lack long-term security. This undermines the idea that capturing towns and cities automatically translates into victory. Even Russia's nuclear threats, while alarming, have strategic limitations. Using nuclear weapons would isolate Russia even further, provoke unpredictable global responses, and undermine any remaining geopolitical leverage. Nuclear threats are tools of intimidation, not practical war, winning options. This reduces one of Russia's perceived advantages and limits the escalation pathways available to its leadership. Economically, war strains Russia's energy sector, which has long been the backbone of its economy. Europe's shift away from Russian energy forced Russia to find new markets, often at discounted prices. Technology imports became restricted. Skilled workers left the country. These economic shifts will shape Russia's capacity to sustain the war over time. Ukraine's economy, while damaged, is supported by reconstruction plans, international funding, and investment commitments tied to its eventual integration with Europe. Ukraine's geography also favors defense. The Dnipro River, urban landscapes, and layered defenses make large-scale offensives extremely costly for Russia. Every kilometer of advance requires enormous resources. Ukraine uses terrain to its advantage, forcing Russia into predictable choke points or vulnerable open areas where precision strikes can be effective. Geography becomes a silent ally, shaping the rhythm of the conflict. Russia also faces the challenge of fighting a motivated population. Ukraine has widespread volunteer networks, civil defense units, and information channels that resist occupation and support the military. Wars of national resistance tend to favor the defenders. Even if Russia holds territory, it cannot easily suppress a population that fundamentally rejects its presence. Resistance becomes a long-term drain on Russian resources and morale. The information landscape plays a huge role as well. Ukraine communicates effectively with its population, its military, and the global audience. This transparency builds trust and maintains unity. Russia, on the other hand, struggles with misinformation, censorship, and propaganda that doesn't always match reality. Over time, this erodes the credibility of leadership and creates confusion within military ranks. Another critical point is Russia's limited strategic objectives. The initial goals of regime change and rapid conquest failed. Revised goals, such as securing specific territories, still lack a realistic path to stability. When military objectives are unclear or constantly shifting, strategic coherence collapses. Ukraine, by contrast, has a simple objective: reclaim its territory and defend its sovereignty. Clear goals unify a nation and its military strategy. Additionally, Ukraine's growing experience with Western systems, artillery, missiles, air defenses improves its long-term capabilities. Training programs across Europe and North America produce skilled soldiers and officers who bring back modern doctrine. This continual improvement widens the qualitative gap over time. Russia can mobilize more troops, but Ukraine can train more effectively. Another issue for Russia is its industrial base. While Russia increased weapons production, it still struggles with shortages of microchips, components, and precision technology. Ukraine receives modern systems from abroad, giving it a technological pipeline that Russia can't easily match. Over time, this imbalance becomes more pronounced. The naval dimension of the conflict highlights Ukraine's ingenuity. By using drones, missiles, and surprise tactics, Ukraine forced Russia's Black Sea Fleet to withdraw from forward positions. This opened maritime routes, protected ports, and demonstrated that even a smaller nation can challenge a larger navy through creativity and persistence. Cyber warfare is another invisible front where Ukraine has shown strong resilience. Despite Russia's reputation, Ukraine defended its digital infrastructure, collaborated with global cybersecurity experts, and minimized the impact of many attacks. Cyber resilience supports military operations, government communication, and civilian services. The psychological dimension of the conflict also matters. Ukraine projects confidence, determination, and hope. Russia often projects fear, uncertainty, and repression. This contrast shapes global narratives and influences international support. Public opinion is a strategic resource, and Ukraine has harnessed it effectively. Long wars tend to expose underlying weaknesses. Over time, corruption, inefficiency, and outdated systems become more visible. Russia's political and military institutions struggle with these long-standing problems. Ukraine, despite challenges, has increasingly reformed and modernized with international assistance. Finally, the core reason many analysts argue that Putin cannot truly win is that the definition of victory has shifted beyond Russia's reach. A decisive military takeover is impossible. A stable occupation is impossible. A successful integration of Ukrainian territory is impossible. A political collapse of Ukraine is impossible. Even if Russia holds some territory, it faces long-term resistance, economic strain, technological gaps, geopolitical isolation, and a strengthened Ukrainian identity. Ukraine's counterplay is unstoppable not because Ukraine is invincible, but because its strategy aligns with long-term realities: resilience, adaptation, intelligence, alliances, motivation, and innovation. These elements create a strategic environment where Russia can prolong the conflict but cannot achieve its original objectives. Ukraine has transformed the battlefield, the geopolitical landscape, and its own national identity. And that's why, in the view of many analysts, Putin cannot achieve a true victory in Ukraine. The war he expected is not the war he is fighting. The enemy he underestimated has become more capable than ever. The world he hoped to intimidate has grown more united. And the long-term consequences of his decisions continue to limit Russia's options. Thank you for watching and staying engaged with this deep dive. If you found this explanation helpful, make sure to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and stay tuned for more detailed breakdowns of global issues.